Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to creating conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Friday, October 4th. I'm Marty Yulee, the President and CEO of Community West Foundation. We're very proud to partner with the City Club on today's forum. At Community West Foundation, we are dedicated to advancing the health and well-being of our community. Many of you know us for the grants that we provide to nonprofits addressing essential needs like housing and food. Our work goes far beyond just writing checks, the collaborations and the work with all of our agencies. Last year, we were proud to award $3.2 million to over 100 incredible organizations across Cleveland, Western Cuyahoga, and Lorain County. We're on track to do that again this year, and our friends from LMM actually receive our largest grant. They are our largest grantee partner, and thank you for being here. Now, I know the City Club is a secular place, but I want you to understand that our commitment is really driven by a verse from the Bible, which is probably familiar to all of us. It's the one in Matthew 25, that says, "Whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." These brothers and sisters would certainly include the more than 16,000 children who are part of Ohio's foster care system, about 2,200 of them in Cuyahoga County. Roughly 1,000 of these young people age out of the system every year. This is a particularly vulnerable group. They're 18. Officially adults, but many of them just aren't ready for everything that comes with that. They're more likely to face homelessness, unemployment, food insecurity. Agencies are working to fill the gaps, but many opportunities remain. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our grantee partners here today who help fill the gaps. A Place for Me with Kate Lodge, Fostering Hope, Missy Toms. Transformations by Cleveland Angels with Gretchen Dupps. And Charity, led by Maria Paparella. Please visit their tables if you have not had a chance to say hi to these leaders in their work. We are without our speaker, Adrian McLemore. I'll repeat this for the radio audience. Due to changes in his availability, we are rescheduling his appearance for a later date. We are very pleased to continue the conversation on aging out of foster care with a panel of leading voices in the field. Joining us to discuss how we can improve outcomes for foster youth is David Merriman, Director, Department of Health and Human Services for Cuyahoga County, which provides safe and appropriate placement for children in county custody. Bev Johnson, Program Director at Community of Hope, a nonprofit that connects young adults who have experienced foster care with groups of volunteers and mentors, one of our Community West grantees. And Saga, Director of Street Outreach at Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, another one of our grantees. And Kai aged out of the foster care system herself and brings a real lived experience in this work. Moderating the conversation, we're thrilled to have City Club CEO Dan Moulthrop. Dan is a friend of the foundation and of me and a real supporter of this community. If you have a question for our speakers, you can text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the second half of the program. Members and friends of the City Club, please join me in welcoming our guests today.
Marty, thank you so much, and I want to extend a special welcome to the members of your board and your staff. It's really a pleasure to have Community West in the house with us today. I'm Dan Moulthrop, and I'm going to shepherd this conversation a little bit, but really the most important person on the stage right now is Kai Saga.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, Kai, it's truly... I mean, I know David and Bev will agree with me when I say we are so fortunate that you're here and that you're willing to share your story of aging out of the foster care system, which is a journey that, from which we can learn quite a lot. And so I'd like to ask you to start with your story.
Thank you so much. Disclaimer, I am a little bit nervous this morning, so bear with me, you guys. But starting with my lived experience with entering into the foster care system in Cuyahoga County, I entered into the system when I was about 14 to 15 years old. Due to, I would say, just disagreements with my sexuality at the time with my biological family, and that turned into a little bit of teenage rebellion and just some generational dysfunction that needed to be unlearned, I felt like at that time. Through my journey through foster care, it was a bit rough. I won't get into full detail about that, but shortly after I aged out of foster care at 18, I did struggle with going down a path of housing instability and homelessness. And through that, I did have support, but again, at a young age, it was really hard to cling on to anyone looking to support you when a lot of times you didn't feel like you could trust adults or authority at the time.
Can you take us to the weeks surrounding your 18th birthday?
Yes. So ultimately, I ran away from my foster home when I was about 17 years old. So when I aged out of foster care, I was technically AWOL. My face was on the news. It was super embarrassing. I was in hiding. I stayed with my girlfriend at the time. And I was safe, I was stable, I wasn't doing anything dangerous. I just didn't feel like I could trust my foster parent at the time. There were dysfunctions going on with the caregivers I was provided with. I was in and out of, I think, 5 different homes within the 4 years I was in foster care, so it was really hard to cling to anything or anyone besides who I chose to be around me. And once I got waved that my face was on the news, I was like, this can't be happening. So again, I did have supports, like I mentioned, and Alan Pittman was one of the social workers from my foster care agency, Safi at the time, and he was like, you have to let people know that you are safe. So I got the number to the detective that was over my case, and
this was a missing persons case?
Yes. And I called the detective, like, can you take my face off the news? Because I'm safe, I'm okay. I'm okay. And they were like, well, we need to verify that. So right, like the day before my 18th birthday, I did meet with the detective. The detective verified that I was okay. My face was taken down off the news, and a couple of days after I turned 18, I was officially emancipated through court, and it was super happy for me. Yeah.
So tell us about what it means for you, or what it meant for you then to be emancipated, but also you had this whole world in front of you, and how prepared were you to manage that?
Yeah, I think that everybody has a notion that when a young adult is turning 18, they think they know everything. So I thought I knew everything. I thought I had it all figured out. But I didn't. That was the reality of the situation. I still did cling on to certain people that were supporting me, but again, I had to go down the path of navigating the streets. I was navigating relationships that weren't the healthiest for me, navigating not talking to my family at the time, navigating the streets. But there was a big sense of freedom for me to be able to do what I want and figure it out the way I want. But again, we, as young adults, do fall down just paths of uncertainty, and that's kind of what happened there.
You experienced housing instability then?
Yes, I was in that relationship that I spoke about, and when that didn't work out, I faced housing instability for about a year or so before I got connected to a place for me.
How did you manage not having a home?
Couch surfing, making friends that I wasn't supposed to necessarily make, or moving around with different family members, just people that I knew at the time. And it's very peculiar that I work with the shelter systems now. When I was that age, you know, I'm fresh out of high school. My main focus is high school things. I had no knowledge of a shelter in Cuyahoga County. Those were things that just don't cross your mind. So you kind of just figure out your path with what you know.
I want to just acknowledge something. You've spoken somewhat vaguely and purposefully vaguely about your experience navigating the streets, friends that you probably shouldn't have made friends with. And that is, I just want to acknowledge that is implying a whole lot. You're not going to go into that right now, but people can use their imagination, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to turn now, we're going to come back to your story for sure. I do want to, spoiler alert, your mom is here, your biological mother is here, and
Yes.
I feel like we should acknowledge that as well, that there's a happy ending there.
My best friend. Make me emotional.
Okay, well, I'm really glad that there is that, that's where things are right now. David Merriman, I want to turn to you from a sort of larger public policy standpoint. Kai's story is so important. Help us understand how emblematic her story is.
Thanks, Dan. And first, I want to thank you for inviting us to be here today. I think about a couple years ago when you hosted a conversation through One Community Reads with Andrea Elliott and the Invisible Child, and you brought in a national expert. But what I know is this story is local. These resources are local. The leadership is local. And I don't think you can have a better champion than Kai, who I've worked with for a couple years now. And I think her story is as compelling as anything I read in Invisible Child. So thank you, Kai, for your courage, for sharing, and for being here today. I want to give the context. I do also just want to point out, Jackie Fletcher was supposed to be here today in the spirit of standing in front of you and wanting to hear from you and also share what's going on. She called me this morning she lost her voice due to a cold, and so you're stuck with me. But our team is in the back. I'll ask them to raise their hands. That includes County Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell. We also have Robin Martin from the Director of the Family Children First Council, and then Laura Brewster from the Prosecutor's Office, and two of our social workers. And I think sometimes these conversations can get very live, and someone might have a question about their own experience. We brought some of our team here. If someone has a question and they don't want to share it publicly, we want to hear what you need to hear, or you need to tell us, or what you want to learn. But we also don't necessarily want to have everybody put their story out there the way I think Kai has been really thoughtful and how she has. So that's available, and we're here with the team. So let me tell you a little bit about the numbers and the context. Every year we could get over 30,000 calls to our hotline, 696 Kids, asking us about, is there a concern? Is there a concern for a child? You know, calls from a teacher, from a neighbor, from a family member, from a clergy member. We end up investigating over 10,000. And so the numbers are very significant. We have 2,200 kids in custody right now. And those kids each represent an individual life. I think it's easy for us to think in terms of foster care, foster kid. But I have to say, each of those is a child with their own unique experiences. And we have to be cautious how we generalize and how we think of them as, at times, a problem. I think they are our children, and we all have an obligation to care for them as a civil society. So we have about 130 youth age out of foster care every year. We have 900 kids that are in permanent custody. That means our plan is not to send them home. The plan is to find another option for them, hopefully an adoptive parent, and our team search for those. We do a great job with finding adoptive parents, especially for young children. As a society, we don't do a great job of finding permanent homes for adolescents, especially when they have needs. If they're involved with the Alcohol and Drug and Addiction Service Board, or they have services from the Developmental Disability Board, or they have healthcare needs. And so what I would say to your listeners, we need you. We need your support. We need you to open up your homes and also, I think, share your resources. And I think we'll talk about that. But I want to also caution this conversation because I think as you see, success is possible. And I said there's 900 kids in long-term, not long-term foster care, but permanent custody, and 130 children age out every year. I was just talking to Greg and Monica from my team, and they said, a couple of weeks ago, we had a high school graduation ceremony with 70 kids graduating out of foster care. This is a cautionary story that we have here. There are youth aging out poorly, but there are also successes. Mm-hmm. And I think as a community, our challenge is to find those successes, to lift them up, and to grow them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we're here.
I'm going to turn to Bev Johnson now. Bev, Community of Hope is one of the kind of well-paved pathways to the success that David is talking about. Tell us about the program and how it works.
Okay, thank you. First of all, again, I'd like to thank you all for inviting us here today, and I think that this is an opportunity for us to reach out to the community and make them aware of what's going on and to get their involvement. Community of Hope was birthed out of a need for young people aging out of the foster care to have support. My predecessor, who has gone on to glory, was a social worker at the county, and she saw the need. So she decided to start, at the time it was called Open Table. Since then, we've gone to a nonprofit called Community of Hope. We changed it to Community of Hope because community is a connection. And the young people said it's a connection that gives us hope. So that's why we changed the name to Community of Hope. What we do is we reach out to churches, fraternities, different partner organizations for young people that are aging out of the foster care system that want somebody in their lives to help them navigate this thing called life that they have not experienced before. So we have like 3 or 4 people that wrap themselves around a young person and they help them navigate life. Our whole objective is for them not to be homeless, fall through the cracks, fall prey to human trafficking, or repeat the cycle. So when we have these young people, these people wrap themselves around them, they help them with all kind of resources. They're there, they become their extended family. They build that trust, they build that friendship, they build that relationship, they build that community, and from there it's extended family. The unique thing about our organization, it has no end date. Most of our young people we found when we first started that they were saying that the open table concept only went a year. We found during that 6-month period, our kids started dropping off. And we wondered why. And because they were beginning to feel abandoned again. They're going to leave me anyway, so let me, before the boom is dropped, let me just leave. So we decided that we were not going to have an end date. So our oldest community is 10 years old. So at that point, they're no longer a community, they're family. They have someone to share their birthdays with, their holidays with, someone to share the experiences that they're going through, someone to help them just navigate life. Young people, when they're exiting the foster care system, have little or no support, and they have no idea how to navigate life. Most of them have been nourished, but they haven't been nurtured. There's a difference. They've been fed, but they haven't been taught how to grow. So that's where we come in. We teach them the things that they did not learn, life skills, how to navigate life, how that you don't put boiling water in a plastic boiling water into a microwave or into an oven.
Little stuff.
Little stuff, you know, that we take for granted. So we give them that sense of belonging. We give them that sense of dignity. Most of our young people said it felt like they were invisible, that they weren't seen. One young person said it was like a little kid walking across the street with nobody to hold their hand. So we take up that slack. We come in and we bridge that gap, and we give them the families and the tools that they need. Most of our people that come in and volunteer, and we're looking for volunteers all the time, somebody with a passion, somebody with love, somebody with a concern, not just anybody that's looking to get another tool in their arsenal or to get another hole in their belt. We're looking for somebody that has a passion to love these young people, because that's what they haven't had, love.
Let me jump in for a second here, because you were on a roll. It was great. But yes, Bev Johnson. She's here all week. 3 shows daily. Kai was a client.
Yes.
Of Community of Hope.
Yes, she was.
Were you there when she arrived?
Of course.
Tell me what it was like when Kai arrived. Tell me what your impressions were.
Well, first of all, when Kai was very reluctant, and when Amber was still with us, she would just pester Kai every day until she got Kai to consent. One of our criteria is that you have to be stably housed, working or in school, and willing to have people in your life. Most of the time, young people that are exiting the foster care system, they have trust issues. They're so happy to be free, they don't want to hear anybody tell them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and what to do. So most of them are reluctant about having people in their lives. So it takes a while for them to realize that they don't know how to navigate this thing called life, even though they think they're grown. That was Kai, and many of the other ones that we have. But Kai finally consented to having a community. When Kai started, she had 8 people. When we first started, we had more people wrapping themselves around the young people. Since that time, our young people said that was too many people. They didn't want 8 people staring at them like they were a project.
Kai, let me turn to you as the project. What was that like for you?
I was very reluctant. I was not open to having 8 strangers in my life. I didn't think that they would care about me, love me. That was something that was foreign. The caregivers that I had when I was in foster care, it was in and out of that. So I wasn't open to trusting. But Amber,
Also, you shared with me earlier too that there were some real racial differences between you and the community around you.
Most of the volunteers for Community Hope are white. And I'm like, I don't want 8 white people sitting around me. I deal with that when I'm in staffings at foster care, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't know what that would look like. And Amber was a white lady who was pestering me to join this program I really knew nothing about until I grew to actually love her and see her as a friend and a mentor in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever she's talking about, it must make a difference. And I really had to open myself up to accepting extra support because I had a 1-year-old son at the time. And I know I wanted better for him. And I'm like, you know, his success depends on the support that and love that I surround him with. So I was given my table of 8 wonderful women, and my relationship with them did grow. It was awkward at first. It was so weird. But they grew to be like my bonus moms over time. And there was one specific person whose application I read. I was like, this person is not opening up and being vulnerable. They haven't gone through anything in their life. Like, I don't think I want them on my table, Bev. And Bev was like, we'll see. And I'm actually the closest with that person now, so.
But that's an interesting little detail there about how people will your volunteers will fill out an application, and the client, the youth that's just aged out of foster care gets to read those. You're not just prescribing, or assigning a group.
Oftentimes, this is the first opportunity that our young people have voice and choice. So we give them applications and they read through them. And they pick someone that they can relate to, someone that's had a similar experience, or someone that's in a particular skill set or profession that they're interested in going in.
And then sometimes you also ignore them and say, well, we're just going to keep her around anyway.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. It's advise and consent, not exactly, yeah. What was the absolute hardest thing, Kai, about aging out?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the absolute hardest thing about aging out was just the unknown. I feel like there was a lot of things or conversations that I should have had with my caregivers at the time, or shelter that I should have had at the time. So I think that not knowing what I would go through as an adult, not knowing what to expect in adulthood, and how to navigate relationships, how to ask for a raise at a job, how to talk to a landlord, those were things that I had to navigate by myself.
David Merriman, thinking about Kai's journey and the work of Community of Hope makes me wonder about upstream solutions. what can be done or what is being done when youth are 15, 16, 17 to prepare them for becoming emancipated?
You know, Dan, it's a great question as well. And I think I would represent Jackie Fletcher in my answer first by saying that is an important point, but we need to be farther upstream even from that. And we need to be doing prevention. And we need to be in the community with our partners, hearing from them what they're experiencing and what their needs are, so that we're in with schools, we're in with community-based organizations, and we're all together wrapping around children. Because if the expectation is that the protective service agency, Children and Family Services, is going to stop all these incidents from occurring, well, we're going to respond when they occur. We need the community to help us to stop abuse and neglect. And I think that's a key. Now, when you have an adolescent come into the system and there may be some dependency issues, and so there's not abuse and there's not neglect, but the parent doesn't have the ability to care for the child, well, things get even more complicated because our ability to stop a child from running away is pretty limited. We're not going to tackle someone and potentially restrain them. And I think a lot of times what we end up struggling with is having quality programs and resources.
Yeah. If I could speak to some of the previous work and some of the present work that's being done with the county, I would love to do that. When I was aging out of foster care, there was an independent living department. And since that has been exonerated, my independent living worker, Kimberly Mitchell, that was my lady, she was one of the people that I clung to for support when I was navigating, everything on my own. And so since that department has gone, I'm like, well, who's helping the young people that are aging out learn things about living independently? And so a few years ago, through the NEOCH Foundation that I'm a part of, I do national foster care advocacy. I did some studying around policy advocacy, and they challenged us all with a project around policy advocacy, and I started a project called Project Transition. And I worked closely with Jackie Fletcher and Monica Johnson on that project to provide and embed ongoing supports for young adults that will age out of foster care, that don't have another choice. And so now I believe that they will be hiring independent navigators within each department and county now. And I'm so happy just to see the fruits of that work. So now people, young adults will have navigators that will be following their case around what they want to learn as they're growing to be independent, and young adults overseeing their case plan more sufficiently so that they are not aging out with a sufficient plan. Even if they don't have a sufficient plan, they have somewhere where they can go back to for support. And we do have an amazing emancipation unit. Again, shout out to Monica Johnson.
I think too.
Congratulations. That's really great. I just want to make sure I understand though that represents, David, an upgrade from the previous Department of I can't even remember what it's called.
Emancipation Unit.
Emancipation
So
Unit.
A decision was made at a point by prior administration to do a generalist model and have every worker learn the skills and make a commitment to doing this. But I think the challenge becomes having, I practiced as a child welfare worker 20 years ago for a couple minutes. And the needs of a family with a small child as opposed to a family with a child with developmental disabilities as opposed to an adolescent are very different. Mm-hmm. And having these generalist services just has not worked. So I think what you're hearing is Jackie Fletcher hearing from the community in need, and Jackie and the DCFS team saying, let's build this together. Mm-hmm. Let's do this in a partnership, because we can't do it alone. And we need leadership from the community, and we're open to that. And we will share decision-making. We will share authority. And I think as a community, we can solve these problems by working together. And I know Jackie Fletcher and her entire team, there's over 700 child welfare workers and staff that I'm representing in this. We're all open to that. We are all committed.
Kai, and then back to Bev. Go ahead.
I just want to highlight as far as sharing power is something that's very important. And I want to highlight youth with lived experience. So exactly. For young adults that are in the system that will age out of foster care, seeing them as the experts in their own lives, seeing their stories as important and valuable, empowering them to know that things may not have been the brightest, but you can be. Is super important to me, and then involving them not only in the planning for their own lives, but the planning for policies and how changes need to be made within the system as well. As I'm giving shout out to A Place for Me, they really did a great job at making me feel important and realizing my power and my voice, and gave me a seat to say, what do you want to do? How do you want to create your job description? How do you want to create your role? What do you want to advocate for? And put me in positions of power to be able to do that. And with the Project Transition project, actually sitting with the Director of Children and Family Services, listening to a plan that I thought out and actually implementing it into policy is just like beyond belief. So when you say like, I'm the most important person here on stage, I don't necessarily think so, because my success really depends on the people that support me and push me forward. And so when we're calling people forward to be foster parents and to be a part of communities, I think that is really important, because kids are only as successful as their support system supports them to be, or lack thereof.
She said it.
She said what you wanted to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Kai. Because I think it's so important that we understand that the young people that we're serving and that allow us to serve them, they have a voice. And oftentimes sitting at the table, we try to make decisions that we don't have any understanding about. So it's important not only for them to be at the table, but for them to be the table, so that they can tell us what they have need of, and then we can cater around those needs. So it's important that all our partners that are represented in the room today, that we all work together and create this environment where our young people coming out of foster care can thrive instead of just survive.
We're going to bring in questions from the audience in just a second. And one more question for you, Kai. In your work with the Northeast Ohio Coalition on the Homeless as a director of street outreach, how often are you encountering somebody who reminds you of you?
Ooh, all the time. It's really hard to not take work home, you know? And in my position as a director now, I'm not doing that direct service with working hand in hand with folks. So it is a little bit better for me in my heart, because my heart is really in this work, and it is disheartening to see people that look exactly like me. But the good part about it is I get to coach a wonderful team, and they get to coach me as well on how to engage with those folks and to be the change that you want to see.
Thank you so much. If you're just joining us, we're about to begin the audience Q&A. That, if you're just joining us, is for our live stream and radio audience. I'm Dan Moulthrop, CEO here at the City Club, and we're talking about challenges that come with aging out of the foster care system here in Cuyahoga County, but also across the state and across the country. Kai Saga is with us. She's the Director of Street Outreach, as I said, for the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, also known as NEOCH. Beverly Johnson is sitting to my right. She's Program Director at Community of Hope. You can look them up if you want to get involved. They, along with a lot of other organizations listed on our website, have real opportunities for volunteers. And also stepping in at the last minute, with a panel of people who stepped in at the last minute, is David Merriman of Cuyahoga County. He's the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services there. So we do welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, all of you here today with us, and those of you joining us via the live stream and the radio broadcast. If you'd like to text a question for our speakers, you can text it to 330-541-5794. The number again is 330-541-5794. Let's have our first question, please.
Next question. It says, in Missouri, foster children age out at 21, not 18 like Ohio. In your opinion, does Missouri have a better system?
David Merriman.
It's a great question. We want to understand what that age difference means. And a very quick plug. My colleague Rachel Benders and I recently submitted a grant to an organization called Youth Villages to assess emancipation, as well as to create an expectation that every youth leaving every public system leaves with a plan. And I'm curious about that, because 21 is actually, that's later, and there's more maturity, but youth don't stop maturing until 25, 26. And I have to worry that we choose these arbitrary numbers and when you can vote and when you can drink and when you can buy a gun and when, like, what's behind that? Whose interests are we serving? That's a good question. I want to look into it, but I got to say, half of this discussion that I don't think we've been able to represent is my boss, Chris Ronayne, challenged me to say, hey, listen, don't just think about DCFS. Think about the entirety of the system. What's happening in the developmental disability system? What's happening in juvenile court? In the state justice system? Because kids are aging out of those systems as well. And so we're actually applying for this grant to try to ensure that we're, number one, aware of how all those systems operate. So it's not just kids aging out of DCFS that have these emancipation staff, but the same for the juvenile court, the same for the state system. How do we ensure that this is a county, this is a city, this is a civic standard, that every kid, when they leave every public system, leads with a plan that they designed and that they're committed to?
And I do want to highlight the Bridges program that we have, which is an extension of foster care in Ohio. We do have the Bridges program where every young adult who aged out is entitled to housing. They get a subsidy for housing and case management until they turn 21. So there is that gap of support. Unfortunately, everyone doesn't choose to go down that path. It is a choice to be involved in Bridges, and there are requirements. So.
And two, the other issue with that is, like David said, we want to put an age on everything. Whether it be 18, 21, we have to understand that most of our young people have been traumatized. So they're behind the spectrum. So even though we recognize the fact that the average brain doesn't mature to 25 or 26, most of our programs stop at 24. So that's when our young people really fall into crisis. So we have to quit putting ages on things and recognize what's behind the young person, the trauma that they've experienced, all that they've gone through in terms of their childhood.
I agree with Bev. I just also want to add to that there are eligibility requirements to this program. I think those youth have to be employed or they have to be in an education or training program. And it's important for us to lift those youth up that are motivated, that are working on their success. But I am worried about the youth that aren't in those programs.
Exactly.
Who are we concerned about? Who are we focused on? And that's what Chris is saying. Everyone. Make these programs available to everyone.
Yes.
And that's what I think we're all challenging.
Yes.
Let's have our next question.
My name is Chris. I was going to ask, from a system point of view, how are we creating more mental health support for youth who are aging out? And the reason why I ask that is because sometimes when we look at aging out, we think of it as a physical journey, mostly about like housing and stuff like that. But as a person, who aged out, it's also like a mental journey. You have to be mentally prepared and mentally open. My anxiety. To the process of aging out. So I want to say, like, how can we support youth more mentally, and how can we promote the mental support to youth who are aging out so they can be mentally open to help, mentally open to the new journey, and just mentally open to being emancipated youth?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. Kai?
Thank you, Chris, for your question. I think that when we are in foster care, we're provided with so many resources like therapy and things that are just so unorthodox for a normal teenager that when it comes to emancipating out of care, sometimes we're not as open to going back to therapy or going back to an adult that's a quote-unquote professional. So I think calling in, again, like we said, on our community to just be a normal support, a normal mentor, just a normal person in a young adult's life is kind of a first step that we can take. I do think that there should be a highlight on mental health throughout your journey while in foster care, but in a more natural way. I think our approach to self-care and mental health while in foster care, again, is unorthodox. It doesn't feel normal for a young person. It's already not normal for you to be in foster care. So to be in foster care and to see a therapist once a week and then see a social worker again twice a month or something like that, it's weird. So I think we can get creative at reimagining how we approach that for young adults, and then with supports we're providing with ongoing or extended case management after they age out. I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
I know in particular with Community of Hope, because we understand, and most of our organizations that are here today are trauma informed, because we realize that all of our young people have experienced trauma. So we have a counselor that we have keep on call. So when our young people run into crisis, we have someone to attach them to or to send them to. Like I said, a lot of our young people that are exiting foster care have taken so much medication in the foster care system. When they age out, they don't want to take it anymore, whether they realize they need it or not. So that's going to take some community, some coasting, some trusting in order for us to help them connect with someone. We have a couple of people now that we're working with because they've aged out and they didn't want to take any more medication because they over-medicated them. So it took us a while to get them to build up trust enough to take them to counselors that will be able to assist them with their mental health.
Can I just lift up Bev's point? And I think if you didn't hear it, I'm going to repeat it. Trust, trust, and trust. And I think we need to first recognize where we've done wrong and have to have some accountability to move forward. I also think we also should recognize that a lot of our youth don't trust us to share anything or the most important parts of their lives with us. We surveyed youth in foster care, and more than 30% responded that they are LGBTQ or somewhere within the continuum. And I think our society doesn't trust them. I don't think our services are ready to support them in the way that we need to. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to change it. In DCFS, we are. But I think it's a larger issue, and if we don't support the needs of youth in foster care, especially when they have an illness. And Chris, I'm glad that you shared this, and for your courage in stepping forward, but also there needs to be protection into adulthood of these youth, especially when, frankly, many families won't protect them. And I think we're still struggling with that.
Thank you, David.
Forgive me for my cough and my asthma allergies are all over the place today. But I do just want to add in, when it comes to support, I'm calling in like all child welfare professionals, caregivers, X, Y, and Z to just embed love into your work. I'm sorry. Young adults, whether you're in foster care or not, are very privy to emotions. They're emotionally charged, and so they can tell when someone actually cares about them or not. And us as adults, we go home into our respective spaces and we're surrounded by family or we're surrounded by people that we love. And that's like the number one thing. Thank you so much. That's like the number one thing that alleviates our minds and creates dopamine that supports mental health. Being in love, being surrounded by love supports mental health.
And a lot of our young people, to piggyback off what Kai said, and David said, number one thing is trust. The second thing is transparency, honesty, and authenticity. Because our young people are street savvy and they know fake when they see it. Mm-hmm. So if you're not going to be open and honest and transparent and authentic with them, they're not going to trust you enough into their lives to be able to help them and assist them.
Such good points. Such good points. Thank you. Our next question.
Hi, everybody. My name is Russell Lang, and I am an iFoster Te AmeriCorps intern. I emancipated out of the system when I turned 18. My question to Kai is, how has your lived experience prepared you in your professional career? Has it allowed you to better serve the community?
I think so. I think, again, having people that supported me and empowered me to be authentic and to be transparent about my story has done wonders in regards to the relationships that I'm able to build with people professionally and when we work with participants or clients. Before my time at NEOCH, I was a navigator with A Place for Me, so I did peer-to-peer support. And working with young adults that literally walked the same path or somewhat similar as me was super radical. Those relationships were something that you can't find anywhere else. For a young adult to know, like, this person actually went through what I went through, it created a bond that you can't really explain. I've had so many people thank me, like, I think you saved my life, and those moments like mean everything to me, to be able to just walk hand in hand with someone who looked just like me. A lot of times I'm working with professionals who have gone to school for social work and things like that, who literally just won't know the things that I know in order to create those relationships, because I actually know the resources, I know what the person is feeling. So it's been awesome to be able to be a mediator between young adults experiencing foster care and homelessness and professionals. I get to speak both languages between each other, and I've seen that work out pretty well. It's helped me a lot.
Thank you. Our next question, I think, is right in the center aisle here.
Is this thing on?
Yes.
My name is Stajan Lee. I am from MC STEM. And I did have a question for Kai. How can you support a friend who is in the foster care system?
I think you can support a friend who's in the foster care system by just being a normal friend. I think that, I mentioned this before, being in the foster care system isn't normal. So when we go to places like school, recreation centers, even at home, we do our best to try to feel normal. Listen to them, even though their story may look nothing like yours. Be a friend, and also be someone that they can trust, because they don't see that a lot.
And I think the most important thing is to listen. A lot of our young people, they don't need you to talk, they need you to listen. And listen with your heart, and not necessarily with your ears, because they'll tell you everything they need to know if you just learn how to listen with your heart.
Great advice. Our next question.
Hello, my name is Kyle Williams, and I'm also from MC STEM High School. And I wanted to know, what are your opinions that the U.S. foster care system has been underfunded, and also, are you worried that that it'll continue to be underfunded by state, national, and local leaders?
David?
Well, so first, I want to first acknowledge the generosity of Cuyahoga County voters. We have a Health and Human Service levy. We passed one just a bit ago, and our community chooses to go beyond state and federal funds. And a lot of communities, a lot of counties in Ohio don't have that. So yeah, there's not enough money. Those same funds are the funds that fund senior services, that funds universal pre-kindergarten, that funds workforce services, reentry services, homeless services. And there is an element that's a zero-sum game, in that someone's got to win for someone to lose, or someone has to lose for someone to win. And so, no, there's not enough federal or state resources. I'm going to do something very controversial. Mike DeWine has been pretty good on child issues. He has. And I think there's an element of politics in my response, but I need to say we got to move beyond politics. We got to call it what it is. And if a Republican governor in a state such as ours steps forward and starts investing in services, we should say thank you. I can tell you right now, Chris Ronayne has made this, addressing the placement crisis, his #1 health and human service priority, and I'd say it's in the top 3 of overall, along with the jail and a couple other major service areas. We need the resources, but I also have to say we've got a lot of resources and we need to do better with them. And at the end of the day, we will not fix these problems alone. It takes the community, and it takes DHHS working with the Adams Board and the Juvenile Court and the Board of Developmental Disabilities, the Education Service Center, and Jennifer Dodge, she's leaning in. People want to lean in. I think we can do this together if we have a partnership, a public-private partnership that's committed, not to our own needs, but the needs of these children.
I think we've mentioned, heterosexism and LGBTQ community. How does that, maybe explain a little bit deeper how that intersects with the foster care system, and why there's a disproportionate number of people that are experiencing homelessness from aging out of foster care that identifies LGBTQ. And then I think my second question is also like systemic and structural racism, and how that's intersecting with the foster care system. If you could spend some time explaining that for our audience.
Thank you for that question. Kai, can we start with you?
I know that a large percent of young adults that enter the foster care system because of their sexuality. I was one of them. And I don't think we focus enough on that aspect of it while they're spending time in care. I really have never had any conversations with anyone, whether it was my social worker or my caregivers, around my sexuality. So creating resources, I feel like while young adults are in care, is something I feel like should happen. There are some resources in the community for young adults that are LGBTQ, but I don't think we just focus on that subpopulation enough. And there's the portion of them entering the system because of that, and then when they exit the system, there's a lot of housing instability that comes with that, being in a place where you feel dignified, being in a place where you feel comfortable, heard, and seen. It's not widely accepted. It's not something that we see a lot. So I don't know that there's anything or any resources that are teaching professionals and caregivers to not be a part of systematic oppression when it comes to the LGBTQ community, and also the racial aspect of it as well. I don't think it's a topic of conversation. I think the topic of conversation is, while they're in care, are they safe?
Do either of you want to take on the structural racism question?
Well, first, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up. It has to be acknowledged.
Yes.
And the term is disproportionality. Why is it that 60% of our kids, the kids that are in custody, are black, whereas that's 20, 30% of any community in Ohio? And so what I just would say is that children come into custody because of abuse, neglect, or dependency. Abuse is pretty clear, right? We all understand children should not be abused. But what's the state of our mental health system? What's the state of our substance abuse system? Do they have the resources to meet parents' needs? I know most parents don't wake up in the morning thinking, I want to abuse my children. What is going on with parents? I'm really worried about parents. I have to say that. There's a growing body of evidence to say that parents are struggling right now, not just children, and we have to confront that. But then let's talk about neglect. The neglect and poverty look so similar. The differences between neglect and poverty is like sort of intent, maybe, I don't know. And we end up getting referrals to look at homes where I can tell you my own experience going into a home, seeing very little resources, but seeing those parents cared for that child. And they gave them everything they had, and they worked within their community, because they live within communities to make sure their needs were met. I walked back out the door, because I don't think we should be taking custody of children because they're poor. However, neglect and poverty look pretty similar. And the last is dependency. And when parents can't meet children's needs, or frankly, parents are afraid of their own children because there isn't a quality behavioral health system to meet the adolescent community's needs. And I just will say the state is standing up this Ohio RISE program, and they're putting forth a good faith effort. It's still in development. So I think we're working on it. But if at the end of the day, poverty is driven by racism in our country, and the lack of behavioral health care is driven by a sense that that's somebody else's problem, but we know it's not.
The quick question is, how might we align this work?
What do we need from our higher ed partners?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
What might you need? Thank you.
Beverly.
So, thanks, Andrew. We're partners with Andrew, and because of our young people, a lot of them don't know what they want to do when they leave the foster care system. We're glad that the college is open. They have workforce programs. Cleveland State has a Scholar Sullivan Decker program. So the colleges are just coming in, helping our young people. But what we need further than that, Andrew, which you can really help us with, is all young people are not college material. Some of them need skills, or professions that they can go into that doesn't involve the regular transitional college. So that's what a lot of our young people need, because we have Workforce 360 and a couple of other programs, but we need more engagement from the community with other resources that our young people can get involved in so that they can gain gainful employment.
Thank you so much, Beverly Johnson, David Merriman, Saga. I want to remind all of you, these people, a week ago, these people did not know they were going to be sitting on this stage. They've done fantastic. Thank you. I want to thank all of you as well, because forums like this are made possible thanks to generous support from people just like you, and in fact from many of you yourselves. And I want to also acknowledge that our forum today is presented in partnership with the Community West Foundation. Marty Yulee, thank you so much to you, your colleagues, and your board members. We really appreciate your partnership today. Also want to say offer a special shout out to our friends from MC Squared STEM High School. Seen a lot of you guys this week. Thank you so much. And thank you as well to the guests at tables hosted by A Place for Me Collaborative, Charity, Cleveland Angels, Community of Hope, Community West Foundation, Cuyahoga County Division of Children and Family Services, Fostering Hope, Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries, and the Northeast Ohio Coalition on the Homeless. For the homeless, pardon me. Up next at the city, yes, please, a round of applause. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, all of you, great. Up next, Tuesday, October 8th, Dr. Kate Anderson Foley, education policy expert, will join us to outline how to close achievement gaps. Sarah Ellicott of Minds Matter Cleveland will moderate. And a week from today, we'll be in the Allen Theater at Playhouse Square broadcasting live with our friends from the Futureland Conference. KeyBank's Chanel Smith-Wiggum will be in conversation with Everett Taylor, CEO of Kickstarter. You can get tickets to those and everything else we're doing at cityclub.org. That brings us to the end of our forum. I want to thank you all once again. I'm Dan Moulthrop. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.